Let's go.
Damn. I have no, like, it's really tough to do that. Notice how his chest never collapses. Particularly when he's up high in this range. Oops. Not what I meant to do. I suppose we'll have to watch more. No, I'm mad about it. God. Starts playing Wow for Eruption. And it's pretty freaking rad. like it's really tough stuff. First of all, let's just take a moment to appreciate these pants were a thing. Right? Pants were a thing. Only in the 80s could those pants be a thing, which is why the 80s, supposedly I wasn't there for it, but supposedly very interesting time. What I love about this with Sammy Hagar is he's an incredible rock vocalist. Many people can do it this well live. Hey, Captain. What's cool is that the way he does his distortion is really specific. So, you can do, it's been a long time since I rock and roll, right? Never get it back, never get it back, right? That's one style where you have basically your tongue goes back a little bit, pushes the epiglottis down. You get a rattling of the false folds. There's different ways to do it. You can also rattle your rytenoids. Good, let's get some anatomy up. So this is your epiglottis, right? It's right behind your tongue. These are the false folds. When you want a lot of that rock sound, you usually contract the area epiglottic muscles, which creates a sphincter. When you contract the AES, you get that sound like, it's been a long time since I rock and roll. It's been a long time. Right, you get that really bitey sound. I'm also adding some nasality because it actually makes this sort of sound safer vocally. Yeah. So what we see oftentimes that doesn't get talked about well, what we see that does get talked about is how much closure there is. We see the top-down view of the vocal folds a lot. And that's helpful, right? When we talk about like falsetto, we can demonstrate that there is no connection or very little connection between the folds. If we want to talk about different registers, you know, maybe there's a little bit less connection in head voice, right? And then chest, we get like this sort of a thing, right? But the problem with all these, first of all, chest, like the idea of chest, head, and all that stuff is not, it's limited. And people, the reason why you know it's limited is because people argue it to death, and there's never any resolution, and then you have to read YouTube comments. And then we all experience tremendous regret for having read the comment section. But when we talk about dynamics, we don't talk often about this element of it, right? That there's this width, right? This girth to the folds. Thick with two C's. And what we don't talk about is stuff like this. So the way that the vocal folds work is you have the Bernoulli effect, okay? So this is something I demonstrate so often that I always feel like it's repetitive, but then people like, what do you mean the Bernoulli effect? I'm like, all right, well, time to put it in another dozen videos. But when you blow through the pieces of paper, you get the folds coming together. But we don't talk about, so this would be the vertical axis, right? Axis. So we see them coming together, but what we don't see is how like this can happen, right? So we get that, and that's what we don't often talk about when we talk about dynamics. If we see the vocal folds from this point of view, we see that there's this thickness here. If you have applied the same principles that we did, where like say that this much is connected, well, now all of a sudden we have like quote unquote voice or lower dynamics, right? There's less touching together. And the way that the volume works, that we would discuss it with the human voice, is not decibel levels. We would discuss it in sound pressure levels. So all you need to know about SPL sound pressure levels is that pressure builds up and it affects the air molecules relative to how much pressure there is, right? So with the way with dynamics would work is there's only so much touching for a softer dynamic. And it all comes running in. Right? I'm gonna pretend that Sammy Hagar was a bad opera singer. For the sake of this video. But there's difficulty to add the difficulty to it, which is what's fucking super cool about what rock singers do. Let me get all this crap back. We have this, right? We contract that, and that gives us the Fran Fine voice. Oh my god, Mr. Sheffield! Right? That's what the AES does. The folds can rattle. The arytenoids can rattle. Fucking levels to this, right? Distortion can happen even on the tongue and the uvula. Right? There's a lot of ways to implement all of this distortion stuff. It's really cool, I think. Yeah, when we listen to Sammy Hagar, it gets nuts. Like even when he goes down, as the AES contracted in air epiglottics, right? The Fran Fine shit, and then it's just he switches it up a bunch. Right? It's like it's super good. Now, it's very important when we talk about this stuff. Like distortion on the voice is very, very tiring and can cause vocal injury. And a lot of like classically trained singers just say this like injuries and fatigue with this style is inevitable. And there are so many examples where that's the case. Sammy Hagar is not one of them. There are singers who do this style who are fine. And one of the big secrets to that is look at his chest on the high notes, specifically on the higher parts. It's hard to see with the shirt, but it's getting better here. Here's a good example. Here, he's bent over, but he's bent over at the waist. Since he's wearing plaid, tight, like pants, because, you know, fucking 80s, I feel comfortable demonstrating in my current tight pants. What happens a lot with when we lift things, right? We kind of lift with the lower back a little bit. You can see that there's an arch a little bit to my back, but that's not efficient. Ideally, we want the weight to be centered when we lift things, used to do this when I worked in groceries and we had to lift things all day and they were heavy, right? So you put the weight on your hips. It's not just lifting with the legs, you're balancing by bringing your butt back, and you have this thing. So really then you're just balancing. That's the reason why this is relevant is because of the way Sammy Hagar is not only holding the guitar, but he's keeping his chest erect, which is a hell of a choice of words. If you look here, his guitar is just right in that spot. If you've ever played guitar, you know that the weight is primarily on the connection to the neck and the body. Now, because I'm a pretentious nerd, I generally hold the guitar like you would classically, so the weight of the guitar ends up being biased towards the plug right here. So that ends up being, if you notice, kind of like close to my hip. If I wanted to hold this for a gig, I would just like bend over slightly, and this is totally comfortable. I can do this for hours. So, you know, the other way to do that is to have the neck dip to this extent, and then have the middle of the guitar kind of like resting in between your hips. So how you hold the guitar is a factor, right? And then look at his fucking chest. Even when he's doing this, look at how there's no arch in the back. Trying to get a nice shot of this. Shirt fucking makes it really, really hard. This is, I think, as good as a shot we're gonna get. This is a good shot of it. So you see the guitar weight down in his like hips, and then his chest, even though he's bending down, his chest is still kind of up, but there's no arch in the back. And the reason why this is important is because when you want to sing efficiently, you ideally, when you sing up high, or you do this style that is not ergonomic at all, it's like just to get that sound, you're making it extraordinarily more difficult to sing. So you have your body and you have your all that stuff, and you know, people say diaphragmatic breathing, and I kind of hate it because listen, if your diaphragm is broken, you're dead. All right, there's no nerve endings with the diaphragm. You don't control that. If you wish to breathe, you will breathe. And if you don't wish to breathe, because you know, I don't know, you're asleep or something, let's not go too dark, it works. It just works. So when, like, how do we talk about breathing and singing if it's not quote unquote diaphragmatic breathing? What we do is we discuss like how much contraction happens all around the torso, because the diaphragm, the way it works is it pulls down the lungs from the bottom, but there's stuff that can contract on the sides, namely the rib cage. There are muscles in between the rib cage called intercostal muscles, and you can expand that and maintain like a torso like that. And the difference between that is night and day. So here's what it would be with it, and then I'll do it without. All right, we're gonna do this opera style because that's how I know to do it. And, I'm bad. No, pardon me, I haven't warmed up. But that's with expansion. Here's without expansion. You hear that tightness? It doesn't matter what your quote-unquote placement is if your chest is collapsed and your posture is bad. So Sammy Hagar, doing this incredibly, like, very difficult style of singing, constantly has to be expanded. It's a lot of energy, but clearly he has it in spades. Just look at how mobile his torso is, just right there. Everything's moving. Nothing's really tight, because, you know, you can't move if you're, like, just try contracting your bicep and moving at the same time. It's not going to happen, right? So by seeing the movement, kind of get the impression that it's loose. So it's expanded, but it's not tight. And, you know, much love to David Lee Roth as a frontman, but no sir, Sammy Hagar takes it when it comes to pure vocals. I also think it's weird that, you know, when we talk about David Lee Roth versus Sammy Hagar, we always say that, you know, David Lee Roth, incredible frontman, one of the best frontmen ever,